Well, thanks. First, I want to say what a pleasure it is to be here and to see U.S. Masters Swimming be very involved. As far as the NGBs go, or the organizations in America, the Masters Swimming provides more support to the International Swimming Hall of Fame than U.S. Swimming, U.S. Diving, water polo, and synchronized swimming. So we're really proud to be a part of a program run by a really forward-looking organization. Sitting here in the room all day today, it seems like it can be summarized in a couple of points. And one, we all want to encourage participation in open water swimming because we think open water swimming is fantastic. And it is. I swam unbelievably my first open water race 51 years ago as a 10-year-old. And over the years, was swimming ocean races in the Ocean City Beach Patrol, a little bit south of Atlantic City. The year that Jaws came out, and that was kind of fun. Every white cap was a great white. And then a guy named Sid Cassidy joined the Beach Patrol, and we would row a flag out a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile out in the ocean, row back, and then swim out. Just the two of us, or even sometimes, one guy had something else to do, you'd do it yourself. And the other thing I think I've come out of this meeting, I think we can all agree on, is the water is a dangerous and alien element. It has inherent danger when we're in the water. Another thing is that experience, strength, skills, there are no guarantees when doing a risk assessment. As we've seen, you can be a great swimmer, the greatest swimmer on earth, and have a problem. You can be a beginner swimmer and have a problem. And no matter how many eyes are on the swimmers, something could happen. Just a couple weeks ago, Lynn Cox was down at the Hall of Fame, and we were talking about this subject, and she told me that a story of about 7 years ago, there was a woman swimming the English Channel. There were two boats watching just this single swimmer, and one boat had two people that were in the water, a smaller boat, that were watching her the whole time. Yet they turned around for just a few seconds, they don't know how long, to have a conversation. They turned around, the swimmer was gone, and she washed up on the Belgian coast 3 weeks later. So there's no guarantee, there's no formula for the number of lifeguards or eyes on a person, because it needs constant vigilance when you're in the water. So the lifeguard ratios are no guarantee. We heard one of the speakers say, with a seizure, it's one splash and then you sink. And that response time is critical. So if a swimmer passes out, the sooner you get to them, there's only a minimal amount of time, a minute, minute and a half, before, if you find them, then you're just carrying someone for a body bag. And one thing that I've learned over the years too is that most drownings, no matter where they take place, are attributed, at least in a lot of cases, to heart failure. But whether it's really heart failure, because when you drown, your heart gives out, and no matter what the cause is, it's diagnosed as heart failure, so it doesn't go to some other cause. So these are some things that we need to be concerned about. And well, I've been running the Swimming Hall of Fame for 5 years, and we do an open water race over Christmas. And we have anywhere from 400 to 500 people in the race. And you just cringe that something could happen. And this can happen anytime. And I think I've been kind of saying this for a number of years because I've had a couple personal experiences with my son, who was a 3-time Olympic water polo player. But fooling around in our backyard one day with my younger sons, they were doing some underwater swimming, see how far they could go. And my 10-year-olds had a team of 4 of them that they're collectively, could he do more than the 4 of them put together in a relay? So 3 or 4 times he'd get ready to start and they'd say something stupid to him and he'd laugh. And by the time he took off, it turns out he was super hyperventilated. And I had to drag him out of the bottom of the pool and bring him up and bring him back to life. He had stopped breathing. And that was in my backyard pool. And then a couple years later, he was at the World Championships in 1999 in Perth. And after the World Championships were over, he ate lunch, and then the fellows all went out and they went body surfing. Well, he'd eaten some kind of bad clam or oyster. And while he was out body surfing in the water, came up with a quick case of anaphylactic shock. And if one of his fellow teammates hadn't been there, he never would have got back to the beach, and they still had to get him to the emergency room, and that's what saved him. So this is just again points out that no matter how good a swimmer you are, when you go in the water, if something happens unforeseen, you're done for. So with that, a couple years ago, I started playing around with that idea. Well, I had another little experience too. I spent a summer in the 1980s over in Zurich, Switzerland. And Zurich's a really neat place, and across the Zurich Sea, they've got public beaches on both sides. So, you know, it'd be nice to just swim across. And I did this by myself a couple times. And maybe the second time I did it, you know, there's some boats out there going 20 knots. And you're out there swimming in the middle of the Zurich Sea, and, you know, you have to dive under to get away from them. I mean, they come up on you so fast. So then some guy says, well, you know, you're so stupid. You must wear this white and red cap so they can see you. So I bought the cap and went out there, and they still don't see you. So, and then, you know, you can swim from one side to the other, and you get over there, and you've got your Speedo on, and you've only got a couple coins. And, you know, you want to hang out, eat a little something, hang out on the beach. Well, you have no way to, you know, you're in your Speedo. It's kind of silly. So a few years ago, I came across somebody over in China who was developing, I don't know if you've seen some of these swims. It was alluded to earlier that the Sun Moon Lake swim in Taiwan, they do, I don't know, 15, 20,000 people, and there's a bunch of swims like that. And I know they do one across the Yellow River. I think they were showing, you know, they've cleaned up the pollution in the Yellow River over there. But, you know, they swim across. I don't think they put their heads in the water. But they're using these flotation devices. So I got in contact with them and we started, you know, playing around with it because I thought there was a great idea of having a bag, a dry bag that would be floatable that you could carry some stuff. So if you swam from point to point, you could put your shoes and your wallet and your cell phone and all that in it. So we came up with a product. But it seems more recently that, you know, no one really thought much, you know, recreational. But what about in our competitions? We've seen Steve's documented 16 deaths in open water swimmings just in the last year, which again highlights the point of emphasis that we have a dangerous element no matter how many people are watching it. What I think the guy in the Midmar Mile took 4 days to find him in spite of scuba divers and helicopters and everything else. It happens so fast. You know, like my son in the backyard pool, I was by the side of the pool when it happened. 1 second, everything's great, and 1 second, you've got a tragedy right waiting to happen. So we developed these things, and it continues to be an evolution and development. But when you look back about in swimming, and you know, because we're doing the two topics here, what are other sports doing? And I look back and I see the same issue as we've got, you know, with helmets and cycling. How long did that take to happen? And we've got a much more inherently dangerous environment than cyclists. So what have we done? We've seen many innovations over the last few years, body suits, technique improvement related to swimming equipment, or new insights on how to swim faster. But one aspect of swimming that's been pushed into the background is the safety of the sport. When was the last time you heard about some new swim safety equipment being introduced around swimming pools? If you think about it, there are numerous designs of life vests, floating rings, and other materials, arm floaties for children, longer sticks that lifeguards extend into the pool in distress, lifeguard rescue tubes, swimming safety belts. All these pieces of safety equipment are great to help a person to stay afloat. However, they're all either impossible to swim with or make swimming very difficult. So what we've done with this, and we've secured the patent over in China, and now we've applied for it here, and it's kind of a way to swim. And if now we can show the videotape, and this is quick, and you'll just see it. It's quick. It's got some music.
No, I need some microphone.
You need the microphone? Anybody know the name of the singer of that song? Got a free bag for you. No. Not paying the royalty on that. Well, so no one wins the bag. So that's a very interesting story behind that, because it's a black artist named Bobby Freeman, and it came out right at the height of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and you may know that virtually every swimming pool and beach in the country was segregated at that point in time, and the song has him doing the chorus with 8 white girls, so it's kind of very funny historically. Be that as it may. What you saw there is the bag that is developed, really it's a loadable, inflatable dry bag, and that's one of the points of the invention. The other one is the way that it contacts to the waist, instead of most, like a lifeguard can, that goes over the shoulder and the neck and irritates you. This you really don't, you don't feel it at all. It sits there and you're not towing it. So that's why it's before the kick. It doesn't interfere with the kick or the arm stroke. And it rides in the hydrodynamic vortex of the drag. So actually, there we go. Nice. Actually, the way the water goes around your body, it curls in and it actually goes forward there, and that's the drag in the water that you want to eliminate. But when you're out there in the water, you're not towing it. It kind of keeps it within that circle of the drag. So you don't feel it at all. And I haven't talked to anybody that's really, certainly in calm water, you never notice it at all. And I've loaded it, and you see that it's loaded with everything. I put about 10 pounds in, and it's really heavy. And then when you get in the water, you still don't notice it. It's no different than the one that we've designed for actual swims. So this one might be viewed as more of a training device, but if you're swimming from point to point, you can still load it up. And it was a funny thing. I mean, let me just tell you a little bit about this. What this does when you're out there swimming, it does make it visible for boats and jet skis. And the more I hear about the danger of jet skis, we can pass that around. And you can see the waistband, and then it's kind of a leash that attaches to the bag. This one here is not loadable. And what this is really designed for is if you're a race organizer and you're concerned about this safety issue, you can get a sponsor to pay for it. If we're talking about international races, there can be the flag from different countries on it to identify them. But when you're watching a swim, how do you tell one from the other? They say, okay, well, they're all wearing their caps with their names on. Well, their heads are in the water. So you're just seeing swimmers out there. But if they had their names on it, something else, cool things they could do, these could all be customized. But it also provides some extra security. We've talked about swimmers out there with cramps, with fatigue. Someone gets dizzy. You get faint, lightheaded in the water. Should they just keep going until they pass out? And if a swimmer does have a seizure and sink or faints, and shallow water blackout's not a phenomena confined to underwater swimming in the pools. I know when I was the head of USA Water Polo a few years ago down in Gilroy, the water polo team was swimming and half the pool was still covered, from the cold. And, they had the practice in there unattended, and they found the body of one of the kids in the water underneath the tarp the next morning. And this was just, from regular swim training, doing some laps, do your warm-up and get out. Who knows what the cause is? We don't know. But if a swimmer in the open water has this and faints and stops, unless someone's right on top, they're not going to see them because they're going to be right at the water level or sink. But if this float is there, someone's going to notice that that's not moving. And you remember, reaction time is critical. If you see a float that's not moving, there's some danger and someone can get to that, perhaps, in time to save a life. So there's a number of reasons why I think that this is something that may be the future. And we've got several different designs. A couple of them just came over to me from China the other day, and they're not online yet. This one happens to be a much larger bag, and it's an inflatable dry bag that also can be attached for swimming. And this might be something a little more recreational, but it also might be something for people out there on your paddle boards that are watching that can be used as a life-saving device or carry life-saving equipment inside it. in addition to towels or whatever else you need, medical supplies. You know, it's not just, you know, some severe man-of-war stings can certainly give someone a poisonous shock, like a bee sting that can send someone into anaphylactic shock. Or, you know, there's things submerged and floating in the water. I don't know how many people have run into boards with nails stuck out of them, but there can be all kinds of medical equipment in here to get to somebody very quickly instead of waiting for other lines of protection. So this is a property that's not my patent. We've done it in the name of the International Swimming Hall of Fame. So all the proceeds from the sale of these go to support this institution, and certainly we want to make this available. So for race organizers, you know, sponsors could pay for this, and it's also a good thing to, you know, it's some good recognition for the sponsor. The bags that contain things, rather than giving them a T-shirt, give something that they can use. So if you put your sponsor on there, you know, then they can take it back and you go out for a swim. And when I think of some of the stupid things I did as a kid down in Ocean City, where I think another fellow, Tim Broderick from this area, who's, I think you better watch out for him in the Masters in 60 and under this year because he's back training. But we used to swim out to the light buoy and into the channel, and we almost run over by boats, and you know, who knows what could have happened to us out there. But you know, when I think about it now, it's very foolish, and I hope that people don't do stuff like that. But you know, with this, you can go out and train, and I've gone down off the Fort Lauderdale beach and swim with this now, and take my stuff, and I come back, and I have it. It's not stolen. Which is really one of the, you know, that video was that. We have another video that's on our website that shows a little bit more about, you know, the safety issues. And we've had Anna Kunas out there swum with it, who was the FINA World Open Water Swimmer of the Year. And, you know, her comments are, you can't tell. But one of the most interesting things that's happened to me today that really made my day was somebody came up to me and told me something that I absolutely couldn't believe, and I'd like to ask. And I know she's up on the panel, and I'd never met Kate before, but Kate, would you tell them what you told me? I mean, Kate has gotten one of these and has used it.
I actually have been looking for Bruce all weekend because I wanted to tell him that the swim safety device changed my life. As soon as I saw it on Stephen's website, I thought, how brilliant. Why didn't we think of that before? I do swim alone, even though I'm not supposed to, and I'm too proud to swim really shallow where it's safer. I want to swim out there where open water swimmers swim. So I ordered the swim safety device. It's brilliant. My husband is especially appreciative because he knows, seriously, you know, my husband is not a swimmer. And for those of us married to non-swimmers, it's an issue. He's much, much happier now that he knows I'm wearing that. And I told Bruce that I know it's working because when I breathe to the beach side, where there's always people walking along the beach, they're stopping and looking and wondering. So I know they're seeing me. They didn't do that 2 weeks ago when I was swimming without it. So I know it's working, and I know that the regulars along the beach are going to get to know that person with the orange thing, and if it's not moving, they're going to know something is not safe. It makes a great rest at your turnaround when you want to take a little breather. It makes a great little pillow behind your neck, and I love it. We're planning to swim one of the channels between the islands next month. And I'm going to use it, which makes it an illegal swim for me, but I don't care because I love it. And I know I'm much, much more visible. If the people on the beach can see me, I know the boats can see me. I love it. It's changed my life. In a good way.
In a good way. That's good. And I think that from what we've been able to understand is even though the idea of this was for initially was for someone who really wasn't that great a swimmer. And I think particularly, if we're trying to get more triathletes out on the open water, it gives them confidence. And that's what I've heard from when we sent it to Master Swimming. And Laura Hamill, who's a coach, she takes the people out in the open water. You know, you're one coach out there on a stand-up paddleboard, and your swimmers are 100 and 200 yards apart. And some of them aren't that great as swimmers, aren't that strong as swimmers, and it gives them the confidence and, you know, just more self-assurance. So I think, you know, there are some issues with it, and we're trying to work those out, and I'd certainly hope that if any of you have any suggestions, we'll take them and get them made and tried. But I think we're on the right road, and when you take a look at what's going on for safety issues in other sports, and we really have kind of ignored this, and when you see the statistics and the numbers, you know, I mean, whoever thought my son would have a difficulty and could have possibly drowned in my backyard pool? You know, I mean, it happens to infants all the time. It's the second leading cause of accidental death is for 4-year-olds and under is drowning in the backyard pool, but I'm talking about an Olympic swimmer. So if you think that, you know, it's worth saving one life, which I think, you know, a lot of people are out there saying, you know, if we can save one, and I dare say that, you know, there's certainly a chance that any one of these 16 incidents that happened over this past year, that one of those could have been saved if they were wearing one of these devices and someone had noticed that it wasn't moving. So, well, we have a whole bunch of varieties of it. This one here is 24.
Wait. Actually, I should tell you, if you buy one of these today, I mean, you call ISOF today, and you use the code WIGO, you're going to get 2 for the price of 1, but only today. And if you call within the next hour, you're going to get some Ginsu steak knives, too, aren't you? Right? Don't those get thrown in?
I think that's
so
right.
go now!
Yeah. I need to hire this guy to sell our stuff. Yeah. I'm going to have some out here, but they'll be up on our website. And I know, Steve, you're going to send out my email address, and I'd certainly love to talk to anybody, particularly race organizers. So this is where it goes. We can customize these. There's certainly, it's like any wholesale or retail product that the price gets down, you know, basically in half, if not more, for volume. But we're not out to make money. We're out to save people. And the mission of the International Swimming Hall of Fame is to encourage everyone to be a swimmer. And of course, that means everyone to be a safe swimmer. So that's what we're trying to do. And by incorporating these in your races, you know, we can help everybody, including the Hall of Fame. So, you know, they start out, the one that is not loadable, is, you know, the retail is $15.95. This one's $24.95. There's one made of heavier fabric that's $29.95. And the larger, gigantic one, which I haven't used yet because I just got these yesterday from China. But this one, probably too big for racing, but if you're taking some kids across a lake or out to an island, like if you do the St. Croix race and you go from Christiansted out to St. Croix, or you swim anywhere point to point, you know, you can take all kinds of stuff and, you know, provide that extra layer of protection that you can't get from any other way. And, you know, we've seen that. You cannot be 100% secure, but you can certainly improve your odds. The curious thing is we tried to do this, we tried to use these in our Fort Lauderdale open water swim, and I do want to say that when we've conducted the Fort Lauderdale swim, it's a mile swim for, I think, 47 years. That's how old the Hall of Fame is. Never had a problem at all, because one reason I think is because we use the professional lifeguards of Fort Lauderdale Ocean Rescue. And we certainly go parallel to the beach too, which makes that much easier. But, you know, the rescues that we have for, you know, sometimes the man of war over Christmas, I think we've had people completely wrapped up in them and almost have become paralyzed out there. And that's where, you know, something like this would help, but also professional lifeguarding. So I guess I've overdone my stay. And I'll be out here with these. I do have some that we can, you know, sell you, you know, I think at between 10 and 15 bucks, depending on which is, so it's absolutely half of the price, because I don't want to take them back. But what I want you to do is I want you to try them out, because I think a lot of people have some misconceptions about what these are. And I think Kate's tried one. I think some other people have. And the reviews so far have been unanimous. It's just a great device and a good idea. And we're going to have to come up with something. I mean, the one may not be the one for, you know, the FINA races, but yet look what happened in a FINA race. And no matter what layer of protection you can do, is what we've seen is there's still something could happen, even if you have 6 eyes dedicated to somebody for hours. You turn away, and it can happen like that. So, Steve?
Thank you. The next topic,
Can I get these back? Because I've got to go over and do the same thing in the other room. Okay, I'll come back and get it.
You gonna take him with you?
WIGO.
I don't know about the Ginsu and Bruce. I don't know whether I validate it.
I want that big one, I'm buying it.
okay.
Okay, you got it. See me out there after this is done.
The next topic for everybody but Chris will be on transponders. And I raised that point because I was just in South Africa, and again, they have a large swim, and the race director said, you know what, I just need to make an investment. And he bought 18,000 transponders. That was the only way that he could get the price down. And I've talked to several race directors here, and they've expressed an interest. We love transponders. There's a variety of benefits to them. You all use transponders, which we'll ask you about. But if there's any race directors out there who are frustrated by the high cost of transponders, what I'd like to propose is that we have a group purchase. We need to purchase 100,000, 200,000 of these, and I think in this room and in this conference, there's enough people that actually can justify a purpose like that. If we can buy something at 100 or 200,000, I'm working with Mr. Shinozaki over there. He did inform me of a Japanese manufacturer who is seriously looking at not only producing these, but actually producing them with additional functionality. So if you're interested, please write to me or email me. Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to ask. We say transponders. Some people say timing chips. Whatever the terminology is, I'd like to ask Mike and Dick and Bob, what do you use now? What do you use now? But what would you like to see in the future? If we are going to go to some Japanese corporations, some Swiss corporations, highly technical corporations that are willing to invest in this growing sport, what functionalities do we ask them to do? They need to engineer something, and we need to give them specifications. So I'll just start there, and if you could pass it around and tell us what you use and what would you like to see.
Well, we use a chip, but I've always thought, well, not always, but recently in the last few years, I've thought, with the advent of GPS, I thought, if they can put a chip on an anklet, why don't they put a GPS? I'm not an IT guy, okay? I could be talking Star Trek language here. I don't know. But why couldn't they put a GPS on the anklet as well? And your timing team, the chip is what they're tracking, here it comes. But why couldn't there be a separate screen with all the little GPSs there, and you have somebody dedicated to that screen, and as soon as one of those GPSs doesn't move for more than, I don't know how many seconds, but geez, there's something happening here. Something's wrong there. So I don't know, maybe that's too sci-fi, but like I said, I'm not an IT guy, but I think that would be really great. And the other great thing about having a GPS on a computer chip, you know how upset your timing team gets when the chips aren't returned at the end of a race? Well, the GPS could lead them to that address where that person just took the chip home in their swag bag, right? They took it off and put that chip in their swag bag and went home, and they could, GPS it all the way to that address and go knock on their door and be the chip police. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on chips.
Yeah, I'm not quite so Star Trek. But we do not use chips or transponders. We're old school. We do stress safety, but we haven't found that the chips really add anything to us at this point. We don't need them really for timing purposes. We're only tracking 50 people. I'm running a 25K race over a 3-mile loop. We have 50 swimmers, so they're pretty easy to keep track of. We have an escort with every swimmer. So we're not using chips yet, but in terms of the future, I think something also with a pressure sensor in it, some sort of a transducer that will send out there's battery life to be considered in a transponder. And if it's constantly sending out a signal, it's going to have a much shorter life. But if there was some sort of a little transducer they could put in there that if the thing goes down 5 feet underwater, that's an easily detectable pressure, a signal can be sent out. Little Star Trek, I don't know, maybe it's silly, and it might be a little too late at that point, but it's better than searching for someone for 3 or 4 hours.
That's too Star Trek because the transmit receive capability is not there in water. That's the problem with the chips right now, is that as soon as water covers them to any degree, or even clothing, like latex or double silicone caps, you start running into a problem with transmit receive.
Right, that's why we have in-water finishes as well, so
Yeah.
that's part of the reason chips don't work.
Well, Mike echoed my feelings about chips. I feel like chips are essential in the competition that we put together. In fact, we were pushing for this years ago, and the technology finally got up to speed to help us with what our desires were. Once again, in our race, we have a very, it's a race that usually lasts about 20 minutes. And inevitably, it comes down to the wire, as many open water swims do, and we have multiple swimmers racing across the finish line, and it's much easier to track with these chips. And I actually saw this happen last summer at the Alcatraz swim. 2 swimmers came across the finish line, and I'm pretty good at making judgment calls, picking the winner. And I looked for the first time ever and said, I can't pick the winner in this one. And they checked the timing chip, and they tied to the 1,000th of a second. And I've never seen that happen with timing chips, but so essential that I think that we have. And one thing I was thinking about while Mike was speaking here, what about the idea of having every swimmer, for example, in the PMS locally here, Pacific Masters Swimming, have their own chip for the season or for the year or for 2 years, and it's their permanent chip, and they bring it with them to each one of the competitions. It has all of their essential information. It's part of their check-in. Here's my chip. Check in, scan it, put it on your ankle, you're ready to go. Just a thought. And but there's a lot of information we could gather from these chips, and I think this is fertile ground for that discussion. And we'll have more discussions on that.
Chris, since we're talking about Star Wars and Ginsu knives, is there anything that the life-saving associations are using, any new technologies, any new information systems that you've seen in the U.S. or worldwide that can possibly have any applications for the sport of open water swimming?
From a technology perspective, there's nothing that comes to mind at the moment.
You got that?
Yes.
I'm sorry. No,
No is the answer.
Yeah, no. Sorry. Sorry that was so brief.
No problem.
Doesn't mean I'm correct. I just can't think of any.
Yeah. My attention was diverted over here because Ben actually had a comment, and if you could repeat that.
Sure. Just my experience with triathlon and with Ironman. There's this device called My Athlete. Has anybody heard of that?
Yeah.
Does that work in the water very well?
It does. They have to wear it on their hat.
Okay, it's 2 ounces, and they use cell tower triangulation.
Mine mostly for the spectators and their families that keep track of an athlete for 17 hours running Ironman, basically. And so you can actually go online anywhere and see where that athlete is. So your friend's back in Indiana, or watching in Florida, and you can keep track of the athlete. And it's still fairly developmental, but it's been around for a couple of years. I mean, you're talking about having your own chip. I've had my own chip for the last 3 years for racing.
Yeah. So
$30.
GPS is not necessarily the end-all be-all. The cell phone triangulation is also something. I don't know how accurate it is or how reliable it is, but My Athlete LLC is the company that makes it.
Thank you. We'll get to 20th century technology, and Mike and Dick and Bob, can you tell us in your race, Dick, you've told us a little bit, but Mike and Bob, you have 800 swimmers. Can you give us pretty specific numbers on the number of kayaks, boaters, et cetera, that you actually utilize during the 800-person race?
Well, the more the merrier. We feel safe. I believe the Coast Guard permit is, the ratio is 1 to 30. We always try and beat that, and we always have beat that on our permit. We've got, I'll start with the jet skis. We've got about 4 to 5 jet skis. We have, I would say, usually about 10 power boats. We have, I'd say, probably 15 boarders, paddle boarders. Recently, we've probably have about 6 to 7 stand-up paddle boarders. And then we really just, I think, because we're in the San Francisco Bay, we're really fortunate in that we really have our own armada of yachts out there. We have sailboats and we have powerboat yachts, and I'll bet we get about 15 of those. We get just an awful lot of those. Again, we're fortunate because it's a mile swim, and as I said earlier, one of our strategies, safety strategies, is basically to make a lane line from the island to Tiburon, and we are able to track everybody right within there. Yeah, we usually have probably close to about 50 boats on the water is what we usually get. All craft, not just that. We even have rowboats. We have some people that like to get out there in their rowboats.
And last question to panelists, and then we'll open up here. Chris, in California, I go to beaches. Florida, you go to beaches. New Jersey, you go to beaches. And you see lifeguards positioned 200 yards, 250 yards apart, whatever it is. Are there any principles that those lifeguards use that could be applicable to the volunteers here? If you could share what professional lifeguards teach each other and expect of each other to the race directors and here. Do you scan? You were mentioning some of those concepts earlier in your talks. And
I think to answer one of your questions, there's no absolute formula for the number of lifeguards per linear foot of beach or whatever. That varies based on conditions, varies on attendance, varies on weather, or, you know, a wide variety of things. Lifeguards are taught very carefully observation skills to watch people in the water. It takes a lot of experience, I've noted, to actually, in some cases, tell if someone's in distress. I can remember on a personal level going through the San Diego Lifeguard Academy and working on Mission Bay for a while, which was not much fun, sort of the kiddie pool, but moving out to La Jolla Shores, which is near Scripps Pier, and a lot of my training was in how to identify people in distress in rip currents. And I remember being assigned to a tower and sitting there for the first time by myself and looking out and seeing this person in a rip current, I thought, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't want to go in the water if there was nothing wrong, but finally I figured out this person was in distress and went in and made the rescue and so forth. And what I'm saying is these kinds of things take time and effort and so forth to be able to evaluate. So a lot of that comes with experience. Could I just mention something about equipment, since I thought that was what we were going to talk about, and since I made all these notes and I don't want to just throw them out.
I'll help you segue.
Oh, thanks. Good. So there'll be more equipment talk. Is that all right? Yes. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we recommend for events and what our lifeguards typically have available to them, so you can get a sort of a sense of the range of what beach lifeguards, certainly in California and on the coasts that are affiliated with the USLA, typically have available. But I'm also going to put this in context of events. For the event recommendations, and this is something that's been linked, so some of you have already read this. I'm sorry if it's redundant because you actually read some of the stuff we sent out. But We recommend that each lifeguard along the swim course is equipped with an observation platform. That is to say, we don't recommend any lifeguards to be in the water. Somebody talked about a stand-up paddleboard, but we have normally been using rescue boards up to now, partly because they're specifically designed for rescue and so on, and it may be that stand-ups turn out to be useful, we'll see. Every lifeguard who's on one of these floating devices, whatever it may be, has either a rescue buoy or a rescue tube with them, because they may need to get rid of that and go and rescue somebody, get off of the board. Swim fins, every lifeguard would have swim fins available to them, and I'm talking about some pretty basic stuff right now. But we would also have lifeguards in rescue boats, as well as using various types of rescue boats. So we talk about personal watercraft, but I want to emphasize that the personal watercraft that we would use would always have a rescue sled. That's really the only way to effectively use personal watercraft for rescue, just because it's hard to get people up onto them, and you can put a lot of people on the sled. There are still agencies that are using inflatable rescue boats with prop guards on them, although the PWCs are turning out to be a much better device, especially for these kinds of events, because they can move quickly back and forth, obviously have a jet drive. Hard haul rescue boats, but I want to emphasize that any hard haul rescue boat that we would have out on the course would have a wide variety of items in it. Masks and snorkels for search and recovery. Pony bottles, small scuba bottles for hasty search. So if somebody's missing, you can put somebody in the water immediately to do a quick search and recovery. Full scuba available with a scuba team on site. A marker buoy. Why? Why is a marker buoy important? The key thing for us, if we lose somebody in the water, is the last seen point. Because as soon as somebody goes down, the water looks the same as it did before that person went beneath the surface of the water. And you need to vector off of something to do your search, whether it's a circular search pattern or a squared off search pattern or whatever. So every single vehicle and boat that we have, United States Life Saving Association agency has a marker buoy in it. And the job of the first lifeguard to go out, if there's a missing swimmer out in the water, is to go out and put that buoy closest to where the last seen point was, so you know where to conduct the search. And I can't tell you how important that is, because with currents, with the lack of landmarks and so forth in the water, that's really key, and it's extremely, really inexpensive. These Pelican buoys you can buy at a marine shop or whatever and have available to you. Obviously binoculars. In all of the vessels and on shore, medical gear, including oxygen, a medical staging area, command area. We recommend that there be an event medical director assigned to oversee planning and on-site of every event, and that person should at a minimum be a paramedic. We recommend that all lifeguards assigned to the event be currently trained in CPR and first aid, and recognizing that in many cases you have people assigned to the events that aren't lifeguards, what we mean is the people you expect to be responding to emergencies should all be trained in CPR and first aid. No less than one EMT for every 150 swim participants, and each EMT properly outfitted with medical equipment that an EMT would use. For us, this is pretty easy because all the full-time lifeguards in California are EMTs anyhow. Pretty much all of the seasonal lifeguards are first responders, but so we would have far more, but that's a minimum standard we recommend. Medical evacuation from the water that can be accomplished in 10 minutes or less. At least one advanced life support ambulance on site or within a five-minute response time for the purpose of evacuating people. Then, in addition to that, at least one ambulance for every group of 250 competitors should be available, and that could be a BLS ambulance, a basic life support ambulance. But what we want is the ability, if there's a major incident with a number of people involved, that they can be transported to the hospital quickly. And then many of these events occur in fairly remote areas, And so having ambulances available may not be all that useful if a hospital is 2 hours away, obviously. So we recommend that where a hospital emergency room is more than half an hour away, there be air evacuation procedures that are planned, or that an on-site physician be staffed under those circumstances. Obviously, full radio communication among all of the lifeguards on the course, or all of the people in charge of the emergencies, so we can direct them to things that are seen, or they can advise us of the need for backup. And a designated medical area, I think I mentioned that. So many of these things that I'm talking about are things that our lifeguards would have available to them anyway. But I wanted to emphasize that to us, these are just basic aspects of planning that should exist for any one of your open water events from our perspective. Thanks. Oh, sorry.
Just a moment here, if I could. In hearing Chris get a chance to go over this, it reminds us of a lot of the elements that we have in our safety plan, step by step. And it's hard to cover all the details, but you did such a great job of doing that, very detailed there. I think it is essential. Some of the things that stand out for us is we do use radio communications, cell phones, and one thing that's a little bit unique, we have a television broadcast, we have a microwave feed, so we're able to take pictures from the race as it's developing, and the director of operations of the competition is able to view what's going on out there. So that's one more level of oversight that goes on. And I think we're fortunate that if there is some kind of issue that goes on out there on the water, that when a rescue is made, we can be at the ambulance within about 2 minutes because the speedboats go about 35 miles an hour, and from any point in the competition where the ambulance is sitting. And we're also fortunate that we have a fire station that's about a half a block away from the finish line with paramedic and EMT individuals there. So I just wanted to cover a few of those points that I think are important. And to have a safety plan is so key. And, you know, we're in conversations today, I think what we're going to do possibly moving forward is to tell people, it's almost like you see an elevator and it says permit available upon request. And I think we'll put this in our website if swimmers have any questions and they want to see the safety plan. It allows them to look at that and make comments. So there we go.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of these gentlemen?
I'm going to put Dick on the spot for a second, just because I think I'm more similar to him in how I run events as opposed to the people in California. When you do the 25-kilometer, you know, I'm just kind of, I'm listening to Chris, and I'm trying to put a price tag on that. You know, I run a small race. It's maybe 100, 120 people. And I completely agree. Everything that you have said, I would love to be able to do. But like from myself or people like Dick, how do you handle the budget limitations, and what do you do to make sure it's safe but still do it with something that's not going to cost us $5,000 or $6,000?
I'm real fortunate to be in the heartland of central Indiana, where lots of people have really good family values and a volunteer spirit, and I can get real professionals at modest prices. I get the police, the fire, the EMTs, the ambulance, so far for the last several years, for free. It's provided. The city sees this as something that's really valuable to the city. Bringing people in to swim in their reservoir, they see that as just a very positive thing. So those services are provided free of charge so far. I also have, because our funds that we raise with this are used to support the Forest Park Aquatic Center, which we manage as well. And so all the money that we raise goes back into that. That resource provides me with dozens of guards that are all Red Cross certified. We don't have an American Life Saving Association organization in central Indiana. We have the Red Cross, and we have very good guards. We have Red Cross provides safety, CPR, all sorts of training, and the lifeguards are very well prepared. Now, most of them are trained for pool work, but because we live in a city with a reservoir, we get them out there and trained in kayaks And so they do get experience out there. They're not certified in beach rescue, but they're certified in life-saving, and they're experienced in water rescue.
Just to give you an example of the budgets, some of the budgets that are used around the world, the Great Swims, a series of races in England, the minimum safety budget of their races is £100,000. I don't know what that is in dollars, but it's a lot.
Thank you. Our biggest sanctioned swim in the Seattle area is the Fat Salmon Swim in Lake Washington. And Liz is in the other room, otherwise she could speak to this a lot better than me. But in their budget, I just actually got the preliminary budget the other day for this coming year's swim. And round numbers, it's a little over $4,000 for her cost for the different support officials that we have to pay from the Lake Washington, the city, the county, whoever else has got their finger in the pie to help, make sure that there's enough safety out there. And it's very well supervised race. But I think that one of the things that Liz does for her event that I think is really spectacular, and her predecessors developed this, but they have a wonderful safety plan. And it is sent out by email to all the athletes. And I have to say the athletes should be aware that the race is a challenging swim and can be, depending on the water temperature, which we never know what it's going to be around there. But it is so spelled out. I mean, it's multiple pages of safety details for everything from what every kayaker, every person on a paddleboard, what every boat is supposed to do, and when and how and who do they contact. And I think she mentioned in another meeting about the using the CB guys. Is that what they're called? Ham guys, sorry. The ham guys to, communicate between the boats and everything. So it's very sophisticated. It's a very sophisticated safety plan. Far more sophisticated than anything I've ever seen in writing anywhere else. And it's, I'm sure she'd be happy to share it with people if anybody's interested in seeing that, because it's really quite good. But it's a big part of her budget, and they don't make a ton of money. They just have fun doing the race.
I just wanted to clarify something from the budget perspective and all that. Part of what I'm talking about was what our lifeguards would have here anyway. And then there are the minimums that the USLA recommends. So some of these things that are minimums that USLA recommends are, for example, 1 EMT for every 150 competitors, having an ambulance on site, figuring out an evacuation plan if you're a long way from the hospital, and so forth. Some of these other things are things that these people would have anyway. So I want to clarify that this plan that we recommend as minimum standards, I don't think is beyond your budget at all. I think that a lot of these other things that the lifeguards would typically have are, I'm just telling you, they're available. The second thing I just wanted to mention is, because a number of people have asked me about this because of Indiana, Ohio, Nebraska, Colorado, where's these surf lifeguards I'm supposed to call up to come help me out with my event? And there aren't any. But if you read our recommended minimum standards carefully, we don't recommend necessarily you use USLA guards. That's not our concern. We're not trying to sell you on you got to use USLA certified guards. What it says in here is that you ought to have lifeguards, and the lifeguards should be properly trained to the environment where the event is going to occur. Properly trained to the area where the event's going to occur. So, yeah, sure, you have lifeguards out there like that. Now, yeah, I would not recommend that you grab the nearest water park or pool lifeguard and just throw them out there. They're not trained for that. They just aren't trained for it. I would also point out that being trained as a lifeguard doesn't make you an expert at running safety in an event. It makes you somebody who's trained to be a lifeguard. So you have to take some of these things into account, and the way we've written this up, we've explained that in some detail. And there's just one other thing, if I may, just because I mentioned this whole thing about this marker buoy for a missing person. This is the United States Life Saving Association manual, and because this issue of losing somebody in the water is such an extreme emergency, such an immediate emergency, there is an entire plan in here and a checklist which you can just make a copy of if you don't want to buy the thing for 30 bucks or whatever it is. And a chapter on search and recovery that explains exactly how to go about all of these things. And I strongly recommend that you get a copy of that and take the checklist and have it available to you. Because any of you could have a missing swimmer in your event at any time, and you need to plan in advance for exactly what you're going to do very quickly, because you have a matter of minutes to recover somebody and hopefully revive them. So that could at least be a starting point for you in your emergency operation plans and so on. Thanks.
Can we get a set of knives with your book also?
Yeah. If you buy it today, I'll actually autograph it. And yeah.
The buoy is absolutely a perfect device, but many of you all out there have another device that will work in conjunction with a buoy. A lot of GPSs have a little spot that is a mark button or an MOB, man overboard button. And if you have kayakers out there, a lot of them are gear freaks, and they will have a GPS with them. All they have to do is mark where they're at, and you can localize where you've lost a swimmer or you suspect you've lost a swimmer. So don't forget that. And a lot of the PDAs and stuff like that apparently have similar functions now where you can mark a spot where you are at that moment. So it's not just the buoy, but the buoy is certainly a great visual response.
Any other questions? If not, I'd like to thank you for your Oh, yes?
Where do we buy buoys, the big 10-foot buoys?
AQ Aqua is the supplier of Bema buoys, and also the big triangle. ETP, there are a number of just Google.
Perhaps what we'll do as a service over the next 2 weeks, we'll survey a lot of the race directors, not only the ones here, the ones overseas. And I think it would be a great service to actually provide a list of providers. And if any race directors have any favorite suppliers, please email them, and so we can send them out to everybody.
There's one other, there is an inflatable belt out there with a CO2 cartridge that's approved by USAT for events, and it's pull in case of emergency. If they pull it, they're disqualified from the race. But it can be used in training, and it can be used in a USAT event. And it's made by Swims. I don't sell them, but Swim Safe or something like that. And it, yeah, Swim Safe. It's come from Triades Incorporated. But it has a little CO2 cartridge. It's a little belt that goes around the waist. And if they get in trouble, you just pull the cord, and it floats them. Since we're talking about equipment.
Any others?
I just wanted to add a little bit about care of the buoys, because a lot of people don't realize they are getting more and more expensive. And those big ones, when we bought them like 15 years ago, were $55, and I think they're well over $100 now.
6-footers are like
300. Well, the big, well, I don't.
Bouncy balls work really
But what I have found out, though, is just had one of these town volunteers that knew what he was doing is actually after the race, and I never thought about it, you need to wash them with soap and water because of the oils that are on top of the water and all really degrade them. And I have not had any trouble with my buoys for 15 years now, so it works.
Wash them down and then coat them with 303. 303 is a vinyl protectant. And that'll use 303 or some other products that are all vinyl protection. We kayakers use it on our plastic boats to keep the kayak in good shape. And all you have to do is Google 303 and it'll come up, and you can buy gallons of the stuff.
store them in cooled.
Oh, yeah, and cool containers away from ozone. That's the other thing, yeah. Sorry, guys, I got lots of wrinkles.
say where you're from.
Oh, hi, Brian Frick, Run Sound Swim Bermuda. It's a 10K. We have about 300 swimmers. We don't have a professional lifeguard association, anything like that, no resources, so you got to make it up. One of the tricks we used was our local regiment, which is like our National Guard or territorials. Fantastic guys to work with. They're used to working in a command structure. They're used to protocols. All their guys are EMTs in their boat troop. Fantastic bunch of guys to work with. They really make your job. When I'm out there with them, I feel totally safe. That's one thing, and they look really professional because they show up in uniform and they're quite cool. The buoys, ETP, great, best company around. They're great to deal with. Okay. And the other thing is regards comms and communications. We found cell phones total waste of time. They fall overboard, they get wet. People don't answer them, they leave them in the car. Get your hands on a bunch of marine VHF radios. They're cheap. Call your local RCC or your harbor master, book some channels, and make sure you got like a couple of simplex channels set aside. They'll police it for you. At least two, one for docks and race officials and one for safety, so there's no crossover. And it's a good, cheap way of doing things, and it's reliable because it's on your belt, it's loud, everyone hears it, and there's no excuses for it not getting answered.
And you get weather alerts on it too.
That's cool too, because you can hit the weather channel, you know what's going on with that. You should be checking with your local marine section, whoever, your harbor master or your rescue coordination center, up to the minute anyway. They can put out a notice to mariners if you're maritime as well. You know, not that anyone in boat traffic pays any attention to that stuff, but yeah, at least it's out there, right? So that's cool. Work with all your local authorities. Use everyone you can.
Brian, when's your race? Just to give yourself a little promotional love here.
Okay, yeah, promotion time. October 16th, we're on. Overseas members, please sign on with Randy Nutt at Aquamoon. He's handling all our overseas entries. We had about 150 last year. Randy just makes our job a ton easier. This is the Round the Sound charity swim Bermuda. It's the 21st one coming up this year. So it's a cool race. It's only 78 degrees. It's really nice. It's just jellyfish, no sharks. Yeah.
Hey, Sean Planky. I'm a lieutenant with the U.S. Coast Guard. Kind of pigeon tail off that. Nobody really mentioned it today, but if you're doing a swim like the mile out there, there's things you can do with the Coast Guard, such as incorporating security zones. I didn't hear anybody say that. Notice to mariners, go out. You're right, not everybody, the wreck boater, they don't always follow those. But every boater should be monitoring channel 16, which if you have somebody in distress and you lose a swimmer, and you're out and doing like the mile or a swim like that, you hit them on 16. Every boater in the area knows that they're supposed to, get their eyes in the water and see if there's anybody out there. Not only that, but you're letting the Coast Guard know who, if in the area, they can launch, helicopters. You can launch all sorts of stuff. I've been involved in a lot of search and rescue myself. Happen to be in Alaska, but those types of things are valuable assets, and you as a taxpayer pay for them, so you might as well use them. Then the second part of that is also the Coast Guard has the auxiliary, which is a volunteer group that of regular people that just like to do search and rescue and things like that. And what you can do with them, if you contact your local Coast Guard, they'll put you in touch with the auxiliary, and they will probably be happy to provide boats that would help patrol your section. Like you said, you built a channel of the racetrack. They would do similar things of the sort, and they go through training, coxswain training and boat crew training to deal with search and rescue and situations like that. So it's just something to think about.
Are these auxiliary units localized? How do people get in touch with them?
To get in touch with your auxiliary unit, you would call the Coast Guard, local Coast Guard station or local sector, and they all have the contact for who runs the auxiliary.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you. Oh, we got one more.
I have one somewhat simplistic. One thing I haven't heard talked about is our support for Learn to Swim. That's where safety starts. Especially with underserved communities. I know that one of the members of last year's Olympic team went out among young people of color and talked about swimming and learning how to swim, and our support as an organization for those kinds of efforts. I understand that there is an older gentleman in Florida that spends time with children of color teaching. It was just something that came across. It's an essential thing in our culture to. I always like to use this metaphor that I heard once, is that when you're in your kitchen, you look out the window and you see the bicyclist and the runner and the people walking, but you never see the swimmer. And I think we tend to forget, but as swimmers, we know how large our population is because we're in the pool, but we're kind of hidden. And I don't know, it's just a very simple thing that when you go back to your community, that is one place where you need to put your nickels too, is that adults and children need to have adequate water safety and swim instruction. It's really important. I have a background in lifeguarding for the state of California, and I would sit on a beach with 10,000 people in front of me, and it's unbelievable what people thought they could get away with.
Dean, did you want to mention anything about Make a Splash or anything?
Make a Splash is a USC swimming program that teaches mainly Thanks, Steve. The Make a Splash program is a USC swimming program that teaches inner city youth swimming lessons, and to date, I don't know the exact numbers, but they've got partners in most of the major cities around the country now, and it's growing by leaps and bounds, and teaching thousands and thousands of inner city kids basic swimming lessons, and a lot of those kids have gone on to further that education and join local swim clubs and become good swimmers. And it's a program that's sponsored by the USA Swimming Foundation, and if anybody wants information on that or wants to be involved in it, feel free to call USA Swimming and ask for the foundation, and they'd be happy to help you. Right now, there is not. It is purely a Learn to Swim program, the Make a Splash program.
A lot faster.
I'm just going to tie together the loose end there. The RCP Tiburon Mile, that is one of our charities that we donated money to last year, the USA Swim Foundation. We feel very close to that, so I'm glad you brought that up. It is very grassroots and a very good cause. Steve.
I also want to thank Bob publicly. He has supported Special Olympics here at his swim and RCP Tiburon Mile, and because of that, the Special Olympics International will actually have their first World Championship for Special Olympics athletes. It's actually happening in the city of Marathon, Greece. There are 23 countries that are sending their athletes to this, and largely the Special Olympics International through Tim Shriver, the CEO. He saw what was happening at Tiburon Mile, and he said that is something that the Special Olympics community can grab onto. So thank you very much, Bob.
Outreach. We do have a swim. I wasn't going to do any of my swims, but at National Harbor in June, and I don't have a calendar in front of me, but the 24th of June or something like that, we're going to do the Seaport Foundation swim. And the Seaport Foundation, if you look it up on the internet, is basically an organization that reaches out to at-risk youths. And basically, they learn how to be carpenters. They're paid to do that. They spend half their day in high school getting their high school education. And then at the end of it, they have a carpenter's, whatever they call that, union card or whatever. But the thing that we're going to do with them is they build beautiful boats. And they're marvelous boats that they build. And we're going to use their boats at the swim for our turn officials to sit in to advertise the foundation. And we're going to donate the money that we're going to make as proceeds from the swim to the Seaport Foundation. This year, we're going to limit the swim to 600 swimmers. And you're welcome to, hopefully our website will be up here shortly. but the Seaport Foundation is who we'll be supporting. So if you're talking about outreach, that's the way that we're approaching it. I'm not sure that any of them will ever become great swimmers or even learn how to swim, but we're hoping that we can get them at least in the water or on the water and interested in helping out open water swimming, because we'll be using them as volunteers also at the meet. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. You've been very patient, you've been very quiet, you've been very respectful to everybody, all the speakers, all the people who have questions. Please relax for 20 minutes, come back to this room, and we'll have Maddie Crippen, who will be here for the Crippen Foundation. Is Maddie here? There she is. So it's 7 o'clock. I highly recommend that you come and listen to